Good afternoon. This webinar offers closed captioning. To enable closed captioning, click on the live transcript button on the bottom of your screen and choose your preferred method. Welcome to the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection webinar. Please note any website or email that I mention will be posted in the chat box. For those seeking business licensing assistance, you can visit the Small Business Center at City Hall on the 8th floor or call 312-74-GO-BIZ. Also, business licenses can be applied for or renewed online at chicago.gov/business licensing. The BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program now has a new portal, and getting your certificate is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Number 1, register for the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program. Number 2, attend 6 free BACP webinars from the listed categories and receive credit after each. Number 3, graduate from the program and receive your certificate. Graduating from the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program makes you eligible to apply for a CIBC Bank USA's Entrepreneurial Loan Program. For full program details, visit chicago.gov/BACP certificate. For webinar calendar, please visit chicago.gov/BACP webinars. If you are already a part of the program, your account will automatically reflect the credit for joining this webinar within 24 hours. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be available at youtube.com/ChicagoBACP. I will post the mentioned information in the chat box. We encourage attendees to ask questions. Please use the chat box to send your questions. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please note that the views, information, and opinions expressed during this webinar are solely those of the presenter and do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection or the City of Chicago. Today's webinar will be Strategic Site Selection, Ignite Your Growth for Your Small Business, presented by World Business Chicago. Now turning it over to LaForce Baker, Vice President of Community Impact. LaForce?
Thank you so much for that intro, and thank you to BACP for having us. Hello, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Really, really excited to be here and talk about something that's really, really important for businesses, and sometimes it's overlooked, and that is site selection. We'll share a little bit more about the definition of what site selection is and why it's important for your business. But again, my name is LaForce Baker. I'm Vice President of Community Impact here at World Business Chicago. And I have a colleague from my team as well here. Zoe, you want to say hello real quick?
Hello, everyone, and happy Valentine's Day. My name is Zoe Saphir, and I am a Senior Manager on the Community Impact team here at World Business Chicago. And I help do all of the site selection on our team. So I'm really excited to share all of our strategies and processes with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zoe. So just to set the stage, we have a few ground rules. Go to the next one. I have a few ground rules. So as BACP already had shared, the questions, feel free to type them in the chat box, but we will be answering the questions at the very end of the presentation. So just know that we will get to your questions then. And BACP will be helping to facilitate that. Since this is a webinar, I think automatically your camera and mic will be off. So yeah, really, really excited to get your questions. So what are we going to be talking about today? Number one, I want to give you an overview on who we are at World Business Chicago and what we offer. Number two, we'll talk about site selection and why it's important for your business. Number three, we'll go through our actual process of site selection and what you can expect when working with someone who specializes in site selection. And then we'll be going through a case study of a new Culver's location by a franchisee called Baron Waller, and how he chose that location using our site selection methodology. And then lastly, we have an amazing interview scheduled with some awesome entrepreneurs, the proprietors of Bronzeville Winery. So that'll be a kind of like a little fireside chat at the end. And then after that, we'll open it up to Q&A where you'll be able to ask questions. So, what is World Business Chicago? World Business Chicago, essentially, we are the economic development arm of the city of Chicago. What that means is we essentially attract businesses which provide jobs to the city. I think one of the most high profile wins that we had last year was attracting Google, building a 5,000 person office at the Thompson Center in the downtown area. Um, our team, which I'll share a little bit more, we focus a little bit more on the neighborhoods with that business attraction, but I'll share a little bit more in a sec. Um, in terms of some of the other teams that we have at World Business Chicago, just so you all are aware, we have our business development and workforce team. They work kind of hand in hand with us, again, to help attract those businesses and retain the businesses that we have here, as well as helping to uh, work through workforce issues. So that might be retention or attraction of folks for jobs that you're trying to fill. Next, we have our innovation and venture team. The innovation and venture team, they focus a lot on the venture capital space, so investing in high growth businesses, mostly in the tech space. So we have that team to help you to grow. And then we have our research team. Our research team pulls together all of the data to really show that sites in the city are viable for business to move there. So that's a great capability that we have. Next, we have our Global Strategic Initiatives team. The Global Strategic Initiative team at World Business Chicago essentially handles all international relations for the city of Chicago and the mayor's office. So anytime there's a delegation coming here from another country, that team is the one that's typically putting that together for World Business Chicago, but then also for the mayor. And then we have our marketing team who really can help in sharing some of the stories of some of your businesses. So if you have some amazing businesses that you think it's ready to be highlighted, we can work with you and help get that story out through our marketing team. And then last but not least, we have PSIS, which essentially helps with getting federal funding for the Chicagoland area. So that's a little bit about overall World Business Chicago. And then for our team, which I'm vice president of, essentially, we really work to help grow and scale businesses on the south and west sides of the city and attract investment there. We really have three pillars with the team that we focus on to do that. Number one, we attract businesses to the south and west side. These are mostly larger businesses, so it can be everything from chains like a Starbucks to Chick-fil-A to a Culver's. But it could also be smaller businesses as well that's looking to grow and expand. So we help do that. And one of the key ways we do that is through site selection. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. Next, we work with developers to help build needed commercial space. So when you think about a space to grow and expand, sometimes, particularly on the south and west sides of the city, which is where we focus, there might not be as much available space. In some cases, we have a lot of vacant lots or dilapidated buildings. And so we work with developers to redevelop those spaces so they can be prime spaces for your business to move into. And then last but not least, we work to help scale existing Black and Brown businesses, throughout the city. And so one of the ways that we do that is through an Access to Capital initiative called our Black and Latino Excellence Investment Summit. We take about 15 businesses a year through that so that at the end of a 16-week period, those businesses can essentially become funding ready. So they can actually go out and try to get debt capital from banks that we line up at the end of the program. And then our other big initiative that we have is our Small Business Tech Symposium, which essentially that's a big open free event. It's a half-day event. Businesses come out and they learn the technology tools that they need to be able to grow and scale their business. So, last year we focused on e-commerce, we focused on marketing, we focused on CRM, and we had, folks from Amazon to Instagram, Facebook, to experts in AI as well that came out and work with the business one-on-one so that you can learn how to incorporate those technologies into your business for free, and in some cases get discounts to incorporate the technology into your business. So that's really what we're focused on. Today, we'll focus a lot on that one pillar, which is that helping businesses to find that space, which essentially is the site selection space. So, what is site selection? Essentially, choosing the space for your business, especially if you are a brick and mortar business that is in the retail space, and I know a lot of the businesses on here might be in that space, is critical. It's critical because number one, you want to make sure you're in a space that's growing. So like we look at the demographics of an area. You want to make sure that space is a place that your customers can get to. So that gets to the accessibility of the area. You want to make sure that you're not going to an area that's oversaturated. So definitely you want to check out the competition of that area. And then, of course, you want to make sure that that space is actually zoned for your business. And so, we make sure when we're helping you to select the space, that space is not only in your budget, but also, fit some of these areas I just talked about, from just making sure your customers are going to be there and that it's the proper space for a business like yours to thrive. So site selection is extremely important. Go on to the next. So who is a strong candidate for site selection? Basically, if you are a business owner that's looking for a new space, you're the perfect candidate. So whether it be a small business owner, entrepreneurs, franchisees, if you're a real estate developer that's looking for the right space to develop where there's actually potential and growth, that's important for you as well. Investors, restaurateurs, anybody that's looking for a physical space to grow their business is a perfect candidate for site selection. And we can work with you. We'll talk more about how you can work with us. We can work with you for free to help you to find that perfect space. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Zoe Saphir on my team that actually goes through our site selection process so you can get a better sense on, what it's like to work with us.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to do a general overview about what exactly our site selection services look like and our offerings. So the first thing is going to be, in general, our site selection services are meticulously designed to empower your business decisions, whether you're a national retailer, a small business owner that's looking for your second or third location, or someone that's purchasing your first brick and mortar. So from comprehensive location analysis to tailored site profiles, financial incentive evaluation, and future development insights that we work really closely with the city, we're here to guide your overall success. So the first point would be comprehensive analysis. So here we're going to look into detailed reports on demographics, market trends, competition in the area like LaForest spoke about earlier, just to find an ideal space for your next location or your first. The next part would be we offer tailored site profiles. This would include key information like the square footage, the zoning, different amenities that are informed by our intake form that I'll go over very shortly. Just make sure that you're making the right decisions. The next portion will be a financial incentive evaluation. So here we're assessing any tax breaks, any grants, rebates, anything to optimize your investment in specific areas and reduce costs, because everyone wants to spend the least amount of money possible. So, and then the last point is future insights. So being that we work very closely with many of our local and city community stakeholders, we're able to monitor different projects that are coming online and different urban planning and infrastructure projects for foresight on market trends and opportunities for you, which is extremely exciting. So with that being said, let's look into what makes picking the right location so important and what are the 8 factors that we need to consider. So the first one is visibility. So visibility and foot traffic attract the customer. So that's absolutely super important. The next thing is your target audience. So let's make sure that you're in proximity to that target audience to make sure that your sales are going up. And then let's make sure that it's accessible and your customers can reach you. The next thing is competitive advantage. So let's make sure that you won't lose any customers because you're a coffee shop going next to a coffee shop, right? Let's make sure that you don't lose anything there. And then let's make sure that it's the right price. We don't want anyone not being able to pay their rent, right? And we want to make sure that it should fit within your budget. The next item to consider is zoning regulations, permits, and environmental status, which could affect the purchasing process. And then we're gonna go into overall location matters when it comes to brand and reputation. So who are you as a business? Who are you serving and what do you want to be remembered as? And then let's talk about what is your future growth and what are you looking to do in the future? So if you are like, my audience on the South Side is this type of person. So based on your location, what are you trying to do in the future and how would that help? So overall, now I'm going to go into our process and what's included in a package when you work with the community impact team. So it's a 4-step process. It's super comprehensive and we work directly with you. So step 1, complete the intake form. It's super easy. You're going to have access to it at the end of this presentation. So here you're going to be inserting your basic information, site criteria like square footage, what's the use, what's the plan, what do you need us to be looking for, right? Are you purchasing or leasing? What are some preferences? Do you need parking? Do you mind being on a second floor? Do you absolutely need to be on the first floor? Where are you at in the financing space? Do you have a broker? Do you have a real estate agent? Those are all the questions that we need to, or it informs us on our initial search process. So the next step would be, once you submit all that info, you'll come into my little portal, my email will ding. And so then I'll start my initial search in our first round of site selection. So here I'm going to be identifying potential sites based on your submissions. So here I also take into consideration market trends, competition. Who are you and what have you told, like what can I understand based on your website presence or what you submitted or through our email correspondence. So then from that, we'll go into step 3. And this is when I put together your site package that I'll go through later during this presentation. So here I'm going to be creating detailed site options with financial incentives, information, and an interactive map for you to play around with so you can explore what's out there, right? And then the last part will be a consultation. So this is where we have our first meeting and we discuss the findings and help you guide what are the next steps. Do you like what you saw on the initial first round? Do you have anything that's like a standout where you're like, I absolutely love this, but I don't like this? Or I want to like, I need to set up a tour right now. I have to see it tomorrow because I want it. So it all depends on where you're at. So once we get to that point, I can either do a second round or third round even of site selection where we just do a better more tailored search and we continue that. So that's where that additional support comes in. So we continue to work with you throughout the whole process. Of course, we are not a real estate agent or a broker. So we have to make sure that you do have that. And if there are any issues or complications through any of the city processes, or you need help, with community engagement or anything of that nature, or any further research on the specific site, we're more than willing to support. So what does this package actually look like? I know all of you guys are thrilled to find out, so let's take a look. So first thing is the intake form. This is essentially what it looks like. It streamlines the process by capturing all that essential data that I mentioned earlier, ensuring that we understand your requirements. What do you want? And we want to make sure this is as efficient as possible and we minimize the back and forth between us. So from demographics to infrastructure, our intake form covers all of the bases, ensuring a thorough assessment of potential sites for you. So next, this was what your essentially your package would look like when it's delivered to you. It is in a Google Drive folder. So as you can see, there's this specific business, we're gonna call it WAB today. They were interested in leasing. So you would click into these leases and then it would show you all of the potential sites. So here you'll find all the comprehensive site reports and site summaries. In these comprehensive reports, there'll be aerial maps, site plans, retail reports, traffic count information, shopping center radius reports, demographic summary and market comparison, and then daytime employment as well as consumer spending. So this is very important for understanding where you're going and what, who your potential audience is and what type of competition is around you. So now that we've seen the site profiles, let's look at our financial incentive PowerPoint that you guys will have access to if you use our services. So here, this is essentially an overview of potential incentives for Chicago's relocation and expansion efforts. So these range from city level to federal level, and we also offer support leveraging like relevant grants and programs to the city of Chicago and other partner organizations. So now we're gonna go into our interactive site map that also comes with it. So here you'll be able to see all of those incentives that are listed in the PowerPoints and do layovers with all the sites. So you can see like, oh, does this site fall into a TIF district? Does this site fall into an enterprise zone? And then if you have a site that wasn't necessarily in your site package, you can just go ahead and type it in and see where it falls and create a new pin. So it's super interactive and it's really fun to play around with just to explore what are the offerings for you in the city of Chicago if you're looking to expand or relocate. So lastly, you'll have an Excel sheet that consolidates all of the location information. So you're not having to look at individual sites and match them and print everything out. You can see everything here from square footage zoning, parking spaces, contact information, and more. So this is just, you could take a peek at everything that we've been working on, and it's divided by different rounds. So you'll see the first section, the first poll that we did, the second, and then even the third if we ever got there. The goal is to get it right on the first time, though. That's always my hope. So with that being said, in the package, you'll have the site profiles, which are typically separated by neighborhood, whether they're lease, for sale, or vacant. We do look at all of those options, and in your intake form, you would essentially list what you're interested in. And then within the site profiles, like I said, you'll have those 9 different reports, and then a site summary report, as well as a property map. And then you will have the financial incentives PowerPoint that you can take your time and read through it at any point. And then you'll have that interactive site incentives map that you can play with. So now that we've discussed WBC's initiatives and processes to support business owners in site selection, I want to highlight one example. His name is Baron Waller. He owns 3 locations in the city. And he has opened the most recent location in Humboldt Park, which was actually discovered on our World Business Chicago bus tour. So he's a perfect example of someone that's used our site selection services. We also offer developer roundtables as well. So those 2 items, if you're ever interested in joining the retail bus tour, feel free to reach out to us if you're just curious. I'm more than happy to share more information about that. That is an annual event and it is invite only. So let's go over this case study. So essentially, we're going to delve into Barron's remarkable achievements of opening the first intercity Culver's franchise in Bronzeville. I love this. I love Culver's, so I was super excited this happened. I'm a Southsider myself. And so this was not only exciting to me because I'm a big custard fan, but it was a pivotal moment that not only transformed the neighborhood, but laid the foundation for a new business trend of bringing about more like sit-down restaurants in the neighborhood. So during our case study interview with Barron, he shared insights into site selection process, strategy, and offering invaluable lessons that I'm like very excited to share with you today for both business owners and entrepreneurs. So what's cool about this is for this case study, this is specific about franchising. And then we're going to be bringing on both Eric and Cecilia and they're going to be talking about Bronzeville Winery. So they're two different types of businesses. So with that being said, we can go into the key factors and considerations. So when he thought about, building a new site, right? He has 11 total. He considered demographics, foot traffic, competition, accessibility, market demand. And that's typically what people use to determine viability of a new location. But he really wanted to focus on what the community needed and what it deserved, truthfully. As a West Sider himself, he saw that it wasn't the same as on the North Side, and I can say so myself. So one of the challenges that he said that he faced, that many others I assume can face too, is skepticism and reframing the narrative. So when we had our discussion, he essentially highlighted that his parent company, being that this was the first Culver's in Bronzeville or on the South or West Side and inner city, he had an issue trying to pitch the South and West Side because the numbers didn't work. But he had to reframe the narrative and fight for this location in Bronzeville because he was a community member. He knew that they would come, right? So he also faced financing bias, and I'll bring it back to talk about like what the opportunities there are or tools or resources for you there. So it's really important to be a part of the community, understand the needs, and realize that numbers are very different from reality. So data alone is not the sole indicator of success of a potential new business in a space, right? So this example would be Bronzeville because it was the highest growth, it had the highest grossing opening week of Culver's history at that time, which is insane because this wasn't necessarily Culver's favorite spot to go at the beginning. But from that point, he was able to open Pullman and Humboldt Park with little to no issues from the parent company, which is awesome, and set a new precedent for Culver's. And then another thing that he faced at the Pullman location was environmental obstacles. So it was tainted land, so they had to go through a whole bunch of city processes to essentially make it viable to actually build at this location and house a restaurant, right? So, and from this challenge, he also showed me and discussed how valuable both relationships are and research. So then we're going to go into the methodologies or tools that you can use. So again, it's really important to integrate research into your process, right? So let's make sure that you guys have different demographic analysis, you know the market, and then you also collaborate with real estate professionals. And for him, he was able to use his parent company, but this is where someone like WBC steps in, and we can help provide this research for these sites. So again, relationships are important, and understanding who's here to help and what offerings and services are out there for you is so important. So I'm really happy that all of you guys are on this webinar today to learn how we can potentially work together in the future. So another point is that I want to go to is relationships. So it is instrumental to know who the community stakeholders are and the community's unique needs and preferences when selecting a site, right? So you should understand who is the alderman, who's a part of the local chambers, who is a community stakeholder, the nonprofits in the area, and reference the quality of life plans as well. Where do you fit in? Where do you see yourself, and how do you add value to this community, right? And then also with these relationships like WBC and the city of Chicago, there's insight into future developments, right? So maybe today there's like a plot of land on the south side, but in 5 years, it's going to be a vibrant multi-use building, right? With spaces that you could actually have, been ahead of and bought a building on that block. So I think it's really important to understand what's going on and have those relationships to help inform those decisions. And then, of course, he also mentioned the value that he gained from the SBA, so the Small Business Association, and that's also what helped him get through some challenges when it comes to financing. So essentially, he struggled when he first came out because they needed about $2 million to start. And he told me, you know, Zoe, I didn't even have that. And all the big banks turned him down because he didn't have the history in order to, you know, to prove like the track record to prove like, okay, I can pay back this loan. So instead, he started going to SBA meetings and meeting bankers and building those relationships with those people to understand like, okay, these are my options. I'm talking to all these people and I'm pitching and I have a great business plan. And so he actually got his first loan from the SBA, which basically catalysted his entire portfolio of Culvers in the Chicagoland area. And now he has 2 sites in Florida as well. So to go over key takeaways when considering your site and who you're working with is, again, understand the community that you're wanting to go into. So consider income levels, demographics, traffic count, and community involvement, but don't make that the end all be all, right? Also, there needs to be an emphasis on the need for personal connection and understanding for the community's needs. And then also just make sure that you create and nurture those relationships. Don't just end at, oh yeah, I met this person. Let's make sure that it's a continuing relationship and you have continued support from said community. And then the next point that he brought up was to establish a strong team. So that's an attorney, a trusted attorney, a fantastic commercial real estate agent, relevant organizations like the City of Chicago, WBC, local government agencies, community stakeholders like the chambers, everything of that nature. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, diverse financial partners. So that's small, large, traditional banks, alternative lending. Talk to everyone. He told me that he actually would walk into banks with his business plans and these meetings and just pitch to people, introduce himself, and he would tell them, this is what I want to do ahead of time. How do I do it? So make sure that you're asking these questions and preparing these relationships, right? And making sure that you are setting a path so people understand what you're trying to do and where you're planning on going. So last point, create and nurture relationships. The people making the decisions about who's getting financed, where the money's coming from, community buy-in, they're all people at the end of the day, right? So it's important to know who the key players are and find who can support your goals and who aligns with your mission and your plans. So consider getting to know all these people that I listed below. I feel like I've said it so many times, but reach out, talk to people, ask for help because it's there. So without further ado, I would love to pass over the mic, sort of speak to the forest, to switch over to our next special guest, Cecilia and Eric from Bronzeville Winery. Take over.
All right. Thank you so much, Zoe. That was an awesome overview of our process here at World Vision Chicago to find the sites. I hope people found that insightful, as well as a great overview of one of our kind of success stories with site selection with Baron Waller of Culver's. And so, we'll be doing the Q&A after. Again, we do this kind of fireside chat with the proprietors of Bronzeville Winery. So without further ado, really excited to introduce Cecilia Cuff and Eric Williams from Bronzeville Winery. Bronzeville Winery has a special place in my heart. I was there when you all opened, and so excited to see where you all came, and they have a special place in my household as well. Last Valentine's Day, we were actually in Barnesville Winery, and we had an amazing time. So they've done a really good job capturing their customer base. Really excited, as a Southsider, as a former business owner, to just introduce Eric and Cecilia from Bronzeville Winery. Do you all want to just give a few words about yourselves before we get into the Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely. We're so excited to be here. Obviously, LaForest, and so the work that you all do at World Business Chicago is the reason and the heartbeat of so many entrepreneurs and small businesses in Chicago. So thank you for always picking up the phone when we call, and also for webinars like this. I'm Cecilia, one of the co-owners of Bronzeville Winery. We've been open about 1.5 years, almost 2 years, on 44th and Cottage Grove. We are a full service, I won't say high end or fine dining, but modern American dining experience. That is a modern American cuisine with a full beer, wine, and spirits list. Our Chef Lamar Moore, is incredible as well, award-winning chef, and we try to provide a high level of service here on the South Side. Our majority of our initiatives at Bronzeville Winery are to make sure that we are advocating for not only people from our community and minority and female makers. So when you look around our space at Bronzeville Winery, you'll see things like our chairs and table were made by Norman Teague from the South Side, or the art on the walls was done by Krista Franklin, who also is from the South Side. The art that's curated on the walls are done by AM/FM, Sierra McKissick, who has an incredible arts organization. And then a majority of our wine, beer, and spirits lists are actually female or minority owned. A lot of those folks that you'll see their brands and labels on our bar are actually living in the community, like guys from Funky Town or Drew from 18th Street Distillery or Moore's Beer. So it's just nice for us to not only have the space on the South Side and to be able to create that space that's known for like the music and the vibe and the arts and the great service, but additionally for us to be able to use our space to help create longevity for those other businesses that are located in our community. But we're really excited to be here. Thank you, LaForce.
Awesome. Eric, want to give a quick intro?
Sure. Hey, how you doing? What's up, man? Sorry, I got a little cold, so sorry. My name is Eric Williams, owner of the Silver Room in Hyde Park. The restaurant, to me, was born out of the Silver Room, actually, because we were approached by QCDC, and they asked about, doing something in the space on 4400 Grove. And I think initially they were thinking a retail space, either the Silver Room or something like the Silver Room. But I actually lived down the street at the time. I was living on Cottage Grove, and I found myself going back to the north side a lot, because when I moved the store from the north side to Hyde Park, I still wanted to go out and have something to eat, and something to drink. And I think on the south side, being from the south side, you just think north side. You don't even think about an option on the south. It's not even an option. You just go. I'm going to the north side. I'm going downtown, which inherently means I'm going somewhere nice. And I'm like, what's going to change what this feels like and what this looks like? So when the space became available, I wanted to do this wine bar concept, and that was the first thing that came to mind. Because a lot of my friends, I realized, had lived in Bronzeville. I talked to some friends, and they all lived on Drexel, King Drive. I'm like, everybody lives in Bronzeville, But we found ourselves either going to Hyde Park or the north side. So it really came out of this demand that I knew was there. Without doing any studies. Cecilia does all the studies. I was like, I just feel like this might make sense. So I felt like it made sense. And that was kind of the idea behind it. And knowing like the customer base at the Silver Room, I figured it would be like an overlap. And talking to people who come and shop, who come to the block party, and understanding what they do when they're not shopping and what they're looking for when they're not shopping, this kind of space was what I was thinking of.
Well, thank you for that intro. And I think also it's really cool because since particularly Eric, you had that start in the Silver Room and then transition to Bronzeville Winery, you all have like two different types of businesses too, which I think is kind of cool to highlight. And I think we got into a little bit of the motivation behind you choosing Bronzeville with, like you said, like QCDC, which for those that are not as aware, they're like a community development corporation in Bronzeville, has been very active for a long time in helping to bring resources and businesses to the neighborhood. So that's one thing, actually, make sure that you're reaching out to your local, community development corporations, to your chambers, things like that, because they're definitely a resource. I'm curious, I know, Eric, you shared that Cecilia, you're the one that kind of looks at the data and stuff like that. Eric was just like, yeah, yep, I feel like it's a good place to go. So can you give some insight, maybe Cecilia, in when you looked at that data, when you said, okay, this could be a viable site?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I have a cheat, is that I designed and developed Hyatt hotels for a little over a decade. So I've done site selection on a national and international scale. But when we start to look at some of the factors that make a business viable, one is community wealth. I think Zoe had mentioned it earlier, but looking at some of the community initiatives, the CMAP reports are really, really helpful and readily available online. They do an incredible job with those reports. But when we looked at the demographics of who lived in the Bronzeville community, there was actually more concentrated wealth in the Black community, in the Bronzeville community around that area than there was in the entire city of Chicago combined. So that was a big factor. I also think when you look at the model of mixed use development, being able to be in a building that has your customer base connected to the retail space is also a kind of a hack. So, I know that there are so many developers in the community that are looking to put in restaurant spaces or, coffee shops. Those are always a great give, because those are community members that can come to your space if you are proactive in outreach to those community members.
Got it. Yeah, no. Oh wait, Eric, were you about to say something? Oh, okay. Yeah, no, got it. No, that's some really good information and some hacks for people to kind of accelerate their business faster. I'm curious, like, did you all get access to any incentives, whether it be from the city or state or something like that, to help in choosing that site or building it out?
I think there are incentives that are readily available to any communities that are considered economic development zones. So for building materials, there are tax, you can have tax breaks on any sort of building materials as you're building out your space if you're working with a general contractor. Additionally, we were recipients of the NOF Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, which is part of the Invest Southwest initiative. So we did receive a grant of $250,000, which is really helpful as you start to build out your capital stack for building a new space, because not only did we have to stack it with our own equity and investors' equity, but additionally, we had to look at debt in addition to some of the city funding.
Yeah, can you share that story about your financing journey on the debt side?
Eric, you want to share that story?
Yeah, I mean, we ain't had no money. An idea. I didn't have any money. It's like, okay, how's it gonna cost? So it was, we got the money from the city, which they don't give you the money. I think people think that they just write you a check for $250. It's not how it works. So you have to kind of do a lot of other kind of financing, even to have that considered as equity. So we, put some money in, got some investors, and then we had to get a bank loan, which was very not easy. We probably talked to 20 different people, probably, CC. What do you think along the way?
Yeah, we probably talked to 30 banks and
Yeah,
pitched to 15 different investors.
right.
Wow.
You have to
30
realize
banks.
too, we were doing this. This is, it's a new concept. Two Black folks, South Side Chicago on Cottage Grove during the pandemic. So it wasn't necessarily the best, environment, but I think it was a good idea, a great idea. I still think it's a great idea. So BMO Harris actually was the one bank that believed in us, and so they were able to kind of help us get over the finish line. But it was not easy. I mean, by any stretch, trying to put together, that kind of money is not, especially when you're new. I mean, even though I have a business that's a different business, this is considered new. In a restaurant business, that whole other thing is considered a very risky business. So, and of course, once you get financed, now people come later and say, I want some more money now. But, just getting that initial push was not easy.
Got it. Well, yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I think that a lot of folks on this call can identify with being told no when trying to go after financing. I think especially if they have concepts that are new or maybe newer, or maybe their management team might not be seen as having the traditional track record or experience that some of these banks want to see. So it's really inspiring to see you all, not just surviving but thriving on the South Side, and essentially you all were kind of a pioneer in Bronzeville, bringing this type of experience. Can you share how you all being there at this location, on Cottage Grove around 43rd, how this has kind of transformed the neighborhood or inspired, maybe other businesses in the neighborhood?
Well, I mean, for me, I thought about this a lot because my store used to be in Wicker Park. It was there for 18 years. And so Wicker Park back in the early to mid 90s was not what it is now. And so I do remember, vacant storefronts, vacant empty lots, in Wicker Park. So it was like, this is very similar. So we can't necessarily think short term when it comes to development of a community. This is a long term, play. It's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. So for me, yes, we want to have a really great space, a good restaurant, a good place to have some drinks. But I think more importantly, it's about what it can do for the neighborhood, not necessarily next year, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when people say, you remember this used to be X, this used to be empty lots, and now you see 5 restaurants on Cottage Grove between 40, 30, or 47. When you see these things kind of pop up, that people have confidence that it could be successful. I've had at least 8 people come in, man, I wasn't sure about this, but now this could work. I have a guy, me and my friend are going to do something, on the next block or down the street. So it's just, it's that leap of faith in many ways to be the first to do something a little bit different in the neighborhood, to prove the concept that it can work. And so you got Reggio's Pizza coming soon next door to us. You got Demira, Ethiopian food. She's coming down the street. You got a lot of stuff happening on Cottage Grove, and for me, this is not 1 year, it's like 10 years from now. What does this look like?
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
something to consider, to piggyback on what Eric was saying, was that when you are that kind of pioneer, marketing is a really important aspect of that. And again, the city of Chicago has great, great programming. Choose Chicago does huge work for getting people out into other communities, other neighborhoods. I think your local SBDCs, for us, QCDC was a great supporter of us getting the word out. But I think we were also really intentional about shaping the narrative of who we were going to be on the South Side, who we were going to be at 44th and Cottage, how we were serving our community, what we were serving, and also who our target demographic was. I think we wanted to make sure that people knew that this space was for everybody, from grandmas who grew up in that neighborhood and on that block before, when it was a housing project, to people from visiting from Spain, who wanted to try like a new Spanish wine. So, I guess I would say, being really intentional, we invited every food writer that we thought should be there out to a sneak preview before, and we had a really intentional dinner with them to talk about, look, this is what we're putting on the South Side. We need you to share this message, because we need to make sure that the narrative is out there of what we're doing, and what you write about this space will shape our block for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And, there are also community groups like the Chicago Community Trust and the MacArthur Foundation that understand the importance of how we shape those narratives. They have a new initiative called the Press Forward Initiative, where, they are trying as much as they can to get the words out about these new businesses that are popping up. There are 78 communities in the city of Chicago, and to be able to tap into the pulse of all those communities is really important, because each one of those communities tells a very different and very culturally relevant story that shapes Chicago. So I think marketing, if you're going to be a pioneer, is really, really important, because there's not going to be anybody else who's reposting, unless you tap everybody to let them know what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good insight. About how you all were very, very intentional about going into the site. I think a lot of people are curious because they see, you talked about some of the partners that you had. Obviously, both of you are on the call. I think a lot of people are wondering, are you two the team, or like, who is your broader team? Like, did you have attorneys? Did you have real estate agents? Did you have architects? Like, who helped you to build this space, build this vision?
You want to answer? I can answer either way. So
Yeah, you can answer.
it's all those things. Initially it was concepted, an idea. Cecilia White Style did all of the detail, the plan. We had someone who I actually reached out to, who I knew from a while ago, who was an ex executive at Chase Bank, who just came on to help us with some financials, and he became part of the team. Really drilling down on all the numbers, the projections, the financials. Cecilia and him did that. Then an architect who became like our family. So they've been doing all of our building, and plus CC other projects. Then attorney. We have a bookkeeper / accountant / a little bit of everything. we asked around for a lot of these people, and Eric at Virtue, other Eric Webb's at Virtue, was very open and just, hey, I use this person for this. Do it this way, not this way. So you have to call around and ask people, hey, look, I'm looking for a plumber. Who should we call?
Mhm.
So, and because once you find somebody who's good, you keep these people. You don't, and so now you have a team of just experience. And so, yeah, it's attorneys, it's legal, it's financial stuff, it's buildings, everybody. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, I think building a core team is really, really important because you can't do everything at once, even if you try to work 24 hours a day. You have to be able to enlist those experts in your area to be able to support you.
Um, yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing all of those different expertise, even down to the plumber, because I think people, they don't realize, like, how many people you need to really pull off a dream like you all have done. Uh, what would you say? I'm just curious, like, once you chose your site and thinking about the team, I know one challenge that people also face is getting employees. Was your site kind of like a key part to getting the employees that you have there? Because I'm just curious, because I've always had an amazing experience there by the employees. So, was that a factor too, or were you thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can answer that. I think when we talk about being intentional, that's a big focus. I think moreover than anything, and what unites both Eric and I as business owners is that we care more about the community and care more about our community than we care about necessarily like making a dollar or getting our name out there. I think what was really important was that we were creating a space where we were creating employment for, up to 50 people who could walk to work, ride their bikes to work. And so I think that's a big part of it. And I mean, in the beginning, there's always turnover. When we first opened, we opened right out of COVID. And so we were recruiting people in a time when people were still getting funds from the government. So that was a little rocky. And procurement at that time was a little bit rocky also because factories weren't open. But I think we have a core team now. We still have a good number of people who have been with us since day one. But again, I think it's intentionality. So we offered health benefits before, anybody said that we had to offer health benefits. We paid above minimum wage. And a lot of those things that we also got were from talking to Eric Williams from Virtue to ask him, what are some strategies that you do to make sure that you have great service and a great team? So, I think also making sure that we include the service charge or gratuity in the checks for 20% minimum was something that we wanted to do to make sure that our service team was being compensated, not only from us, because we pay benefits, but also being compensated in such a way that they felt like they were being compensated for the job that we knew we were training them to do. So, I think we try really hard to be as giving to the employees from a cultivated and family sort of standpoint as possible. And again, that comes from, I've always been in the hospitality industry. And so we were just trying to create an environment that felt representative of things that we would have wanted to see throughout our entire career. So we don't have a lot of turnover, which is great, which means there are people who are consistently striving to train, and I think last time we checked some of our server wages, our servers were making what these servers at Alinea, which is a Michelin star restaurant, were advertising to make. So for us, it feels really good that we can create that environment and that experience in Bronzeville.
I want to add to that.
Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Just want to add a little something. When we first opened, it was a little difficult to find some folks to work who I knew who worked downtown, who were also skeptical about coming to the South Side. People who live in the South Side, so that's something that I didn't think about. If you live on 44th and King and you work at Fulton Market, you're like, I'm making good money down there. I'm not going to work on Cottage Grove. So I think it was like a proof of concept even to the staff to say, well, I get the same as I make downtown, even more, but I don't have to go 4 or 5 blocks. So that was something that I think we had to kind of do. The other thing is it actually costs more money in some ways to hire folks from a community of people who don't necessarily have the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50-year history of working in hospitality, because they have to be trained more, and even I remember we first opened up, some of the people that we hired had never been to a nice restaurant before. So we actually took them to Virtue to kind of show them this is what a nice restaurant looks and feels like. This is how service is. So there's added cost to invest in your community that sometimes people don't really think about that, but it's definitely part of the mission that we still do actually.
Do you all, so I mean, that's really, really good insight. I never really would have thought about, essentially you almost have to retrain people's perception about an area, even if they're from that area, about working there. Um, do you feel that even with like with the customers sometimes, like do you all have to do that, or maybe in the early days that you all may have had to do that, was that a challenge at all? Maybe they thought that the restaurant was going to be one type of way and it was another experience when they came in, or that wasn't a challenge.
I I would say, well, for me, I just want to set something up and set up a way that I think it makes sense. You know what I mean? So you can't be everything to everybody. So once you decide, hey, here's the service, you're gonna have great service, here's the vibe, here's the music, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of it, you know, and the marketing of it is to kind of explain to people what they're coming into. But once they get there, they're like, "Oh, this is cool. I didn't expect this." So who knew what they expected? What they usually say they didn't. It's better than what they expected, you know. And it's a bit of a oasis in some ways, but it's the marketing of the space too. It's like, wow, it's like on the street that it's not much happening, you know, as far as like hospitality. But I come in here and it just feels good. So, and I think just the consistency of doing that too. And it's like, again, this is not a short term goal. Let's try to have the hot thing, blah, blah. It's like, no, here's who we are. And over time, people will understand what this is for those who don't. And 5, 10 years from now, it's, you know, it's a staple.
Got it. All right. Well, yeah, I'll just end with this one question, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Uh, last question is, do you have any advice that you will share for folks in potentially choosing a site for their business, whether it be a new site or expanding their current business?
I guess I would say it would be a combination of what Eric and I have both spoken about, follow your gut and your intuition of, is this somewhere that you want to be? You're going to be in it as a small business owner, you're going to be in that space a lot. So if that space doesn't make you happy, then, you should keep it moving, but also go out and talk to your community, talk to the community members about their experience and you all spoke to this earlier, and about, what they want from the community. I think it's really important to be able to be an answer to something that fills a void, not just another of something. And do your research as much as the research you can put in prior. I think is the most important part, because you don't want to just hastily move into a space. It's not something that's ever going to go away. The perfect opportunity is not going to pop up and disappear in 30 seconds. There's always going to be another space. And especially on the south and west sides of Chicago, there's so much opportunity for us to reinvent these spaces that can be really impactful in very long-term ways to our community. And so I think being intentional in the spaces where you are operating business so that it is long-term, I think it's a promise that you're writing to the community that you're committed to them. And that feels really good.
And Cecilia will speak to this more, but if you can purchase the space, I would say, as a very general rule, especially on the south side, because you can buy a building for less than you'd be paying rent for it. So if you can, I would say purchase the space for sure. And there's more financing available for the business if you actually attach it to real estate, as opposed to just an unsecured, loan for just the business side of it. So buy some land.
Awesome. Well, I think that's great advice, and I hope today that everyone was inspired, but then also was informed, by learning about our process, kind of seeing the two success examples, talking about Culver's and then also talking about Barnesville Winery. And so now we'll open it up to Q&A, and as we said before, we are available to help anyone that's on this call or those that with site selection if they're looking for another space. So feel free to reach out to us. We'll make sure you get the link. So I headed over to BACP to facilitate the Q&A.
And we have a lot of questions. Let's see. Let me go back to the very, very beginning. So they have been sending in questions since you started the webinar. Are your services offered for only Chicago sites or for suburban locations as well?
So, when we first started, we kind of focused on the city proper, but now we focus on the Chicagoland area. So, with that being said, this QR code that's up here on the screen right now, if you scan it, when you put in the sites that you're looking for, just specify that you're looking for some sites in the suburbs, and we can also try to take a look there as well. Our team, just full disclosure, we do focus and kind of lift up the south and west side. So with that being said, you might still get a couple options from the south and west side in your site package that Zoe put together, because we really want to encourage people to kind of help and revitalize these areas. But at the same time, yeah, we can definitely take a look at some spots in the suburbs.
Can you share real estate attorneys' recommendations?
I don't know if Eric or Cecilia, you all have one. I do have one, but I'll let you all lead if you all have one.
I guess it would be a question, does it have to do with real estate tax attorneys for tax abatement, or just real estate attorneys and practicing real estate attorneys in general? I think real estate attorneys have specialized areas, so I'm happy to share depending upon what's needed.
Do you have any grants available for startups?
So, World Business Chicago does not provide the grants, but we do work with the Department of Planning at the City of Chicago, which actually provided the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund grant that Eric and Cecilia brought up, the $250,000 that they got to help in building out their space. And so, we regularly work with them. And so, while we don't provide the grants directly, we can definitely kind of advise you on whether it makes sense for you to apply in the latest round for grant funding, whether it be neighborhood opportunity funding, TIF funding, or a new type of funding that's going to be coming, which is bond funding for your project.
Bronzeville Winery, are you open to art business collaborations?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
Are you open to art business collaborations?
To art business, I'm not sure what that means. Art.
I would say for anybody who's interested in like an art collaboration, all of our art is actually curated by Sierra McKissick. And if you go on our website, bronzewinery.com, her email is on there. And so they can actually connect with you and talk about maybe being a part of one of our rotating artworks that you can find on the wall.
Right, there you go.
How do you identify community wealth?
That's it. I mean, so in relation to site selection, since that I'm guessing that's where this is coming from. I know for us, a lot of times we look at the average income in an area. So that's what most businesses are going to kind of take a look at, the average income, in an area to decide, okay, does this area have like the household income, particularly maybe disposable income, if it's a higher end business, to be able to regularly patronize my business? Like it might make more, even on the south and west sides of Chicago, you have areas that have higher disposable income than others. So like, I think Cecilia, you mentioned, there being this kind of concentration of Black wealth in Bronzeville, made it kind of make sense that maybe this is the location that we choose right now, but maybe later on down the line, there could be other areas that, wealth is growing and you say, hey, I want to do another location there.
I would add to that though, it's not just the disposable income or what people are spending. It's also the cultural side and what people spend money on and how they spend money. Because you can have a neighborhood that has very high income, but they don't buy certain kind of things. Or people with a low, and they tend to buy certain things. So I think it's not just looking at what people spend. Because when I moved my store from Wicker Park to Hyde Park, the neighborhood gentrified and the income levels went up, but actually what they were buying for me actually went down. So you have to kind of look at what you're selling and has a match between what you're selling and that demographic. So it's not necessarily just how much money they have.
Good point. And by the way, our research team can help with quantifying some of those areas where people spend money. So we've actually done studies sometimes on, you know, what people spend on groceries, what people spend on eating out, you know, things like that. So we can do that for your business as well.
Yeah, but in general, how much money is available to spend on my product that I'm selling?
Next question. Did you did you have a financial model before you went to the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, or did you just apply?
So I think I work with businesses. My morning job before Bronzo Winery is I work with businesses throughout Chicago with the Nascent Group, and we do a ton of applications for all of the city funding and all of the grant funding. I would honestly say, as a small business, don't do anything without a financial model. Just don't, because then you don't know how much money you need. I think that you should always, if you're applying for anything, always have at least an annual budget, and then also know that if you're going for a piece of real estate, whether it's a mortgage or whether it's a rent or you're going to rent a space, just know how much money that you're going to pay for that, so that you know when you're looking for debt or working with a bank, you know how much money is available to pay for any sort of loan that you might get. I know that's a short way of answering it, but yes, you should always have a financial model first. An annual budget is great. A 5 to 10 year valuation is better. And it's going to be really difficult to access any sort of funding if you cannot prove that you have either a 5 or 10 year pro forma for showing how much debt capacity that you have for any sort of loan products.
And by the way, just a shameless plug, we have our Black and Latino Excellence Investment Summit, who the application is actually open. It's on the World Business Chicago website. And in that program, we actually work with you on 16 weeks to help you get your financials to get funding ready at the end of it. So if you need help with that, like if you don't have an amazing person on your team like Cecilia, we can help you with that for free.
How did you find investors, and what kind of investors do you have?
Want me to answer that?
Yeah, you can answer that. Besides asking everybody.
Honestly, it was people that I know, people that trusted me from the soul room. I mean, very honest. So I think we had a track record. So okay, this guy's got this business. He's been open for 20 plus years. This sister concept makes sense. So I think it was a sense of confidence people had because I had store. So yeah, it was people that I knew, honestly, or people that I knew that somebody knew them. So it was, either friends or a friend of a friend.
But I think there are also resources, like I know Chicago Community Trust, Trend as well. Yeah, I think those are two groups, Cleveland Ave, where if you are to send them like a proof of concept or set up a one-on-one meeting with them, there are people called angel investors or community equity investors or community investment investors that can actually, that are looking for investments. There also are new markets tax credits when the project is pertaining to housing, that there are buckets, and I'm sure LaForce and his team at World Business Chicago can also have some accessibility to groups where investors might not know how to invest in a community, and so then they'll connect you and act as that liaison. But again, there are investor attorneys, and so it's really, really important to make sure that you're protecting yourself when you're looking for investors. I would say not to sign any sort of investment deal with anyone unless you have have engaged an investment attorney to make sure that your asset is protected, because you're going to work really, really hard for this business, and $25,000 might feel like a lot to get there, but it's not worth losing more after you've made $1 million.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's definitely different resources that we can connect you with. And like I know one aspect of the incentive package that we put together when we do your site selection search is we talk about, is this area in an opportunity zone? That means that you could get access to opportunity zone investors that will be interested in investing in your business because you're in an area or essentially they get a tax break for investing money into your business and keeping that money in your business. I think it's for about 10 years. That's the kind of the stipulation. So like with that being said, we can definitely help you with that. Also, I personally, I know the journey of working with investors because prior to coming to World Business Chicago, I grew a business in the food space and brought on investors. So, you know, I can kind of make recommendations to, especially if you're in the food space, some of those angel investors that I know that are interested in investing in this space. Again, there's no guarantees, but at the same time, I think as Zoe was saying, you know, it is kind of like building relationships. So it might not be that you get the investor immediately, but you're kind of like building that relationship, and then you build the confidence, like Eric talked about, that folks had in him because he already had this existing business for a while. And then they say, okay, like, yeah, I do want to write a check for your business. And then you can pair that with some of this debt capital from a bank to help grow your business.
How long is the process to become a business owner? Or did you get your LLC first and then your business license?
Y'all want to take that or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can get that pretty quick. You know, I mean, I think it's a couple days. I think it's not a long process. So, I mean, becoming a business owner, just having a license to be a business owner is one thing. Actually running a business is a different thing. But yeah, I mean, you know, just getting your state tax ID number. I think first you just do like a little search online. You put your name in, and then you know at the sixth floor, City Hall, they walk you through everything pretty. The sixth floor, eighth floor, sixth floor. Anyway, it's not difficult to do, and I will say the city has pretty good resources.
BACP.
Yeah, as I say, BACP, who's hosting this call, actually issues the license.
Yeah, join the BACP newsletter. They have every type of webinar or teaching class all the time that you can learn every aspect of the business or every aspect of like how to develop a business. And they're super helpful.
Yeah, and I will add this, you know, having a store for 26 years, going through 5 different administrations, the 4, it's actually gotten better over the years. It's much more streamlined. People are really helpful. I can honestly say that. So, thank you, BACP.
And technically for restaurants, your license, your business license is connected to your final inspection. So once you're done with construction, the health department will come and do an inspection, and that's when you get your business license or your certificate of occupancy. But there's like 50 steps before then. So, but the city does have great resources also. You know, if I'm happy to be a resource also, because there are checklists that are found on the cityofchicago.org websites. But again, BACP, that's what they do all day. So that's kind of their wheelhouse.
Let's see. What does your current marketing team consist of, and how does it look? What does it look like?
Current marketing team, we have a full-time person who does our social media. And then it's kind of like all hands on deck. I know CC's always posting stuff. You're always trying to get the word out in all, you know, in everywhere you can, you know, be it PR, we have a PR person we use. You know, physical flyers. I'm old school, so I still believe in like the physical postcards and yeah. So we have somebody who's pretty much full-time doing it for us. So
Yeah, we do social media, which is important, and all assets of social media. So Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We also do newsletter blasts. So I think we've got a newsletter email list of about 8,000 people. And our opening rate, I think, is about 45%. So we do email blasts. That's really, really important. And then additionally, we try to do PR and we do press releases. So something that we actually had a summit with the National Association of Black Journalists. So if you haven't heard of the National Association of Black Journalists Chicago chapter, we've got an incredible team here of Black journalists led by Brandon Pope, I believe. And they said, and we hosted a summit where we said, all right, business owners, we invited like 20 business owners and we invited all of the Black journalists and we sat in a room. I was like, let's just battle it out. We'll have a glass of wine at Brownsville Winery and let's battle out and talk about how can we get more of our stories told from our small businesses into these newspapers and these, you know, TV shows. And so part of that, what came out of that is that we're not telling our own stories well enough. So we send out press release to the National Association of Black Journalists anytime we do Valentine's Day dinner. If we're going to do a, you know, Super Bowl party, or we're going to do a mentorship program or a wine dinner, we write our own press release and we send it out to as many people as possible in case they want to pick it up, because people are always looking for stories. So you got to be your own advocate.
We have a lot of comments saying, thank you very much. Great information. They want to know, what about nonprofit organizations? What is out there to help them?
So I'll say, at least from the World Business Chicago point of view, we don't, unless you are a nonprofit looking for like an office space, we don't like offer our site selection services. We kind of focus on for-profit businesses for the most part, you know, helping them to find locations. You know, so yeah, so for us, like our services for the most part are for-profit entities. However, I mean, of course, we always support nonprofit entities. Like if you have things that are going on that you think that you know, we should come out to, we could definitely support via like just visibility. You know, letting people know about different events and initiatives that you have going on, or show up. But yeah, you know, we don't work on the site selection side with nonprofits.
I will say CIC and IFF, which acronyms are difficult. I don't know what they stand for, but they're two non-traditional lenders in the city of Chicago. So CIC and IFF, they do great work with funding nonprofits. I know IFF also has like a real estate development arm that can help with site selection as well. And so those are two organizations that work really well with nonprofits. And if they can't, they're also incredible organizations that give you a quick no instead of a really long drawn out no or a long drawn out yes, which can be the death of most small businesses. But they'll tell you where you can find those resources, and they'll even send like a warm, friendly email connecting you with them. So IFF and CIC.
Do you need both a real estate broker and a real estate attorney when purchasing a property?
I would recommend it, because your real
Yeah.
estate broker is the one who's going to find and negotiate your deal, and your real estate attorney is going to the one who's going to make sure that you're protected.
Yeah, having a good this is kind of like in my experience outside of World Business Chicago, but having a good real estate attorney can literally just save you so much headache. I remember outside of World Business Chicago, I do real estate development, and I had when we were closing the property that we bought, we had found out that it had, like, my real estate attorney found out that it had like a lien on it from an owner's niece that no one ever saw, that essentially, you know, would have derailed the whole transaction. And so having a really good real estate attorney that like knows the lay of the land, knows what to look for, is really, really helpful, just to make sure that you have a smooth closing and that you actually end up with the title to that property at the end of the transaction.
Me too. I have my heart set on one location. Would I still be able to use the site selection program?
Yeah, we can help you kind of determine the viability of that location. You know, Zoe shared a lot of different factors that we look at when looking at a location, and we can also help you kind of expand your horizons based on your budget and like who your target market is. Because we've had folks that'll come to us and they'll say, okay, see, we have access to the commercial real estate database, which you cannot access publicly. unless you have a subscription to this service. And so, with that being said, we'll have people that'll say, "Okay, I just give me the contact information for the broker for this location. I'm dead set on this location." And then once they end up kind of taking a look at it, they find out, oh, there's already an offer on that location, or maybe that location has some issues that you don't realize, and then where do you go from there? We can give you some other options that's within your budget that might be a similar location that you might not have thought of, in addition to getting you access to that actual location. So yeah, we could definitely help you with that and beyond.
Hey, I have to run, everybody, but thank you so much. Appreciate you. My email address is eric@thesilverroom.com. If anybody wants to contact me, feel free. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric.
We have time for like 2 more questions. What is the website for the Black journalists?
Do you know the website, Cecilia?
Oh, I could probably Google it. I will. Let me see.
Okay, it might be NABJ, but
I know they have yeah, if you just Google National Association of Black Journalists, it pops up first. And you just type in Chicago chapter. They're also really active on social media. So they have a Facebook and Instagram too. So that's really, you can find them pretty easily. If not, I'm happy to share their contact info from their emails. I don't have it right now, but I just put, I know somebody was asking about a real estate attorney. I put a real estate attorney that I've found to work really, really well, and just their specialty is real estate, but they also do business formation. I put them in the webinar chat. Hopefully that's the right place. But you can't sue me if you don't like them.
Can you recommend an architect?
I am happy to, again, recommend an architect. Disclaimer, if you don't like them, you cannot sue me. But I would say whenever I always think when you're going to find any general contractor or architect, always interview 5 people and get bids from 3 people. Don't ever go with the lowest bid, because a lot of times technically they're missing something. The highest person could potentially be gouging you, but I think whenever you're trying to work with somebody, one, making sure that they have similar values to you. Like at Bronzo Winery, we asked, what's your give back? How many African-American or female or minority people do you employ? We asked, where do you source your products from? We asked, do you have any community give backs before we worked with our general contractor? Same thing with our architect that we work with for Bronzo Winery. My favorite architect in the city is Future Firm. Other architects, if you're on this call, don't get mad at me. So Future Firm does a really great job. It's a female minority owned architect, and she does a lot of mentorship, which is why I enjoy working with her. She also is well versed on a lot of the city grant programming. So that's really helpful because the city of Chicago has a lot of pretty rigorous design standards. They're not rigorous. They want you to design things that are beautiful in your communities. And so as a result, they like to look at your design. So Anne Louis is her name. It's Future Firm. They're located in Chicago, and they do a ton of work on the south and west sides. They did Bronzo Winery. They did Justice of the Pies. They've done, I think they're working on the new Revolution workshop. So really, they do a great job. I'm trying to think of other, Gregory Williams is another South Side architect that I work with often on a few projects. So yeah, there's so many incredible GCs and architects throughout the city, but Future Firm is who I think I usually work with the most. If you work with an architect, it's also really important that they're dedicated to getting you from the conceptual or the schematic design phase all the way through construction, to make sure that they're kind of checkpointing back and forth with your general contractor, to make sure that everything that the general contractor is building is being built to the specs that have been presented to the city of Chicago and to the zoning department.
I'll just add in, I think Cecilia, you identified something I think is really key, especially for those that I think pretty much everyone will need to engage an architect and a GC with a project, whether you're buying or leasing. So having, I think, both of those people at the beginning of your journey is essential because that's going to, the architect can kind of cast that vision and then the GC can say, okay, yep, like we can actually build that in your budget because they'll give you the actual cost for making that happen. So yeah, I think that was just really good insight to share.
And I just put future firm in the chat.
It looks like that is it. If I want to say thank you to World Business Chicago for today's webinar and to their special guest from Bronzeville Winery. If you are part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, within 24 hours, you will receive credit for today's participation. To learn more about the program, please go to chicago.gov/BACP certificate. Again, that's chicago.gov/BACP certificate. To learn more about our upcoming webinars, please visit chicago.gov/business education. Again, that's chicago.gov/business education. This webinar was recorded and will be posted to our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/Chicago BACP. Again, that's youtube.com/Chicago BACP. Again, thank you to our panelists for today and happy Valentine's Day and have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us.